The best of Money Matters. Under the Radar.
You're listening to Money FM 89.3, and it's now time for Under the Radar with me, Chua Tian Tian. That's all about software companies today, and this time we're going to talk about a company that builds and improves on the open source Linux operating system, and that company is called Red Hat. Now, the history of Red Hat takes us all the way back to 1993, when software was distributed through physical CDs in retail stores. Now, that was when a small businessman named Bob Young met tech geek Marc Ewing at a tech conference. Now, Young had been running a computer supply catalog business out of his home at that point, and Ewing had been geek-hacking and spinning his own distribution, or what we call improved renditions of Linux operating systems on CDs from his home. So, one day, Young decided to buy Ewing's CDs to tap a growing interest in the Linux operating system, and he sold out of them so many times that the two decided to team up to found Red Hat Software in 1995. So at Red Hat, the firm pursued a stable and accessible distribution of a constantly evolving, community-developed Linux operating system instead of protecting trade secrets and filing patents for expensive proprietary products taken by most industry players. So the firm reached multiple milestones through the years, going public with a record-setting IPO in 1999. It also became the first open-source tech company to exceed $1 billion in revenue back in 2012. Then came 2019 when IBM acquired Red Hat for $34 billion in one of the largest software acquisitions in history. And today, Red Hat is the world's leading provider of enterprise open source software solutions, using a community approach to deliver what's said to be reliable and high-performance Linux, hybrid cloud, container, and Kubernetes technologies. But how is Red Hat faring at this moment in time? And how is it evolving in the age of generative AI? How are partnerships with chip titans AMD and Nvidia key to future success? For more, I'm joined in the studio by Daniel Au, VP of Enterprise Sales Asia Pacific at Red Hat. Daniel, welcome to the show.
Hi, Tian Tian. Great to be here with you.
Great to have you join us. And Daniel, we've briefly talked about Red Hat as the world's leading provider of enterprise open source software solutions that delivers reliable and high-performance Linux. A lot of jargons in that sentence alone. But I understand basically the firm started when its founder improvised on the Linux operating system and sold their improved renditions of it. So how would you describe what Red Hat sells to the man in the street?
Well, I think you kind of mentioned it is operating system. So today, I think in the man on the street, we are all aware of operating system on our phones and on our PCs and notebooks. So for example, Windows operating system, or on the Apple iPhone, you have iOS. On the Mac PC, you have Mac OS. So in the same way, Red Hat produces and distribute what we call Red Hat Enterprise Linux, which is the operating system for servers and for businesses where applications are built upon.
And let's talk about your products and services. Right? How has it evolved over the years, and how would you describe Red Hat's value proposition and business model today? Because we talked about hybrid cloud, we talked about container, we talked about Kubernetes technologies. What do these terms exactly mean? Where do they fit in the bigger scheme of things for Red Hat?
Yeah, it's a lot of technical jargon.
Yeah.
It's always difficult to explain. Well, I think firstly, of course, as a software company, we call ourselves as a platform company. And platform is in a sense that we sit in between the hardware and the applications that run on top of the hardware. So we provide the interface between the application and the hardware that powers it. So along the years, of course, the technology has changed a lot over the years, and especially driven by the way applications are being built. Application in the past were built, what we call it in a way, it's like a waterfall or monolithic. This application are very, very long, and to update and improve on the application takes a lot of time. Then we came into the internet era, and most recently over the last couple of years into the cloud era and also mobile era. In the cloud and mobile era, application needs to be operating really, really fast. And the way it's being changed, the changes that happens also comes on very frequent. For example, as you are using your mobile phone, every other week or month, you get an update of your operating system, or you get different versions of the applications that you use. So because of that, the underlying operating system that connects the application to the infrastructure also evolves. It started off with Linux operating system, and then it moves into what we call middleware, when more of web-based Java was being used, and then Red Hat then moved into containers. Now applications are built and into what we call containers, and then being orchestrated around in using a term called technology called Kubernetes. So to make it simple, it means that in the past, application was written with hundreds of thousands lines of code, or even million lines of code. But today, you break up that 100,000 lines of codes into small or containers or compartmentalized code, sometimes called microservices. So then when you want to update the functions and features of your application, you don't need to change and recompile your entire, software code base, but you just need to change that compartment, that has that feature itself. And then what we now provide as an operating system, it started off with the server, then builds across upon what we call containers, and we call it operating system of the data center itself. And of course, as we enter into the era of AI, we're also looking at how do we build the operating system for AI, from an open source way, and getting, really contribution and understanding of how the open source community is moving.
So can I understand that in the past, basically you run different versions, improved versions of Linux, and then you distribute them, and, developers, they build upon the improved software. And now you're moving more downstream, so to speak, in terms of providing more and more interoperable platforms that makes it easier for developers to just build their apps on top without thinking too much about the thousands and millions of lines of codes that goes between the apps built at a surface level versus the hardware.
Yeah. Well, put it simply, we tend to say that we in Red Hat and in open source, we try to democratize technology and software. So what does it mean by that? In the early days, when you build an application, you need to build an application based on the specification of those hardware vendors that build the hardware. It could be a PC, could be a mobile phone, could be a server. But then, as we democratize it, it means that you can build your applications independent of how hardware is being built. And then the middle layer, which is the platform which Red Hat provides, then will provide you with the ability to build application most efficiently and effectively the way you want to do it,
so
without caring about hardware.
More and more efficient, and more multifunction, multi-plug.
Correct.
Lack of better words.
Yes.
Okay. And let's talk about product offerings, right, Daniel? Yes. Red Hat's products can be split into 4 main verticals. Correct me if I'm wrong. You've got 1, Red Hat AI. 2, you've got Red Hat Enterprise Linux. 3, Red Hat OpenShift. And 4, Red Hat Ansible Automation Platform. It can get a little technical.
Yes.
Help us break down the services you provide under the various verticals. And also, ultimately, when it boils down to dollars and cents on Red Hat's balance sheet, which is the most important vertical?
Yeah, so you're right that our products kind of broken down into that 4 main products in the area of AI, in the area of Linux operating system, in the area of OpenShift, which is our container management and application development system, and then lastly, of course, automation, which is Ansible. And if you look at the portfolio, it really our mission is really to help enterprises manage their IT more efficiently and effectively. And we power something called open multi-hybrid cloud. Okay, let's deconstruct that forward, right? Open multi-hybrid cloud. Okay, firstly, when you talk about hybrid, what do you mean by hybrid? Hybrid means that you're not fixated to one particular form. Okay, so when you say cloud providers like Microsoft, AWS, Google provides what you call compute and cloud services that you can run your application on top. Right, so that's in cloud. But sometimes you want to run application in your own data center. That's called on-prem. And sometimes you want to run your application into the edge, like an ATM machine, or like into a power station somewhere, or even on a plane or on a drone itself. Those are what we call edge destination itself. So when we say hybrid, it means that you can run it anywhere.
Okay.
And we say multi-hybrid cloud, it means that you're not just confined to just AWS or Microsoft Azure or Google. So in the same way, your application can run on any cloud also, right? And then when you say open, it means that it's based on open source and you are not locked down. And being open source, you can actually, move away and choose. If you decide Red Hat is not adding value to me anymore, you can choose another vendor and you can migrate openly, to another open source vendor's software as well. So that's kind of where, we provide value to the customer. And we talk about the 4 products. It really aligns to the way applications are being built. The Linux was more the original, and they're still old legacy application that just runs on Linux itself. As applications are now built using what we call containers and microservices, it then runs on the container management solution, which is OpenShift. And because IT is becoming very, very complex, you need automation to make things simpler, right? To allow companies to manage it simply. And of course, as we move into the era of AI, we need to also address how is AI now being managed and infused in every application that everyone uses and everyone is actually producing.
So in terms of product offerings and your business model, you sell the sort of like multi-plug, and that multi-plug is based on open source. So if you don't like this, your codes are basically, it can be modified by another solution provider, so to speak, right? But how do you make money then? Do you make money by selling this multi-plug? Do you make money by running a subscription service for this multi-plug?
Right.
Or do you build applications using this multi-plug and sell the applications instead?
Okay, so maybe I'll take a first step. Red Hat is very unique itself, is that we are a 100% open source company, meaning that open source is like a free recipe that's shared with everyone. Red Hat takes this recipe and then improve the recipe. But whatever we improve in terms of the recipe, we actually contribute back to the original recipe so that everyone will also see the contributions that we make. Other companies may also take on open source, but as they build something on it, they don't share anymore because they want to keep the proprietary nature of the software itself. But how do we make money? I think the challenge with open source or open recipe, because it's being accessed by hundreds of thousands of people, and the code changes. For example, in the Linux operating system, the code base of Linux probably changed about 40% a year. And in the areas of Kubernetes, it's an open source project, the code base actually changed almost 100% every year. And why is it changes? Because of the requirements of companies and different technologies are coming like AI. The functionality and the code actually changes. So how Red Hat makes money is taking these changes and provide a very stable version for customers and enterprises so that they can use it in a stable manner. At the same time, of course, in anything that's software, there's always security issues. So if you use open source or open recipes, your support comes from anyone out there in the community. But for Red Hat, because you're using Red Hat's software and version of this open source software, we provide engineering support as well as we also patch any security gaps that there are. And you get this in a constant way. And we constantly improve, also work with clients on this. And that's how clients kind of trust us, because you get a very stable version of an open source software that can be used for enterprises.
And if we go back to the 4 main verticals, very quickly, Red Hat AI, Red Hat Enterprise Linux, Red Hat OpenShift, and Red Hat Ansible Automation Platform. Which is the most important vertical financially? Is it OpenShift at this point?
Well, I would say today, for example, in our business, about 50% of business still come from Linux operating system. But OpenShift is the modern way of building application. So the growth of OpenShift is in a high double-digit growth. Right? Whereas, of course, in the operating system, it's still growing at low double digits, but it's still growing very fast. And I can't say which is the most important child
AI is up and
in the
coming.
family. But AI is up and coming. So I would say that the newer so-called verticals or platforms that we have are growing much faster. For example, OpenShift has hit almost $1.7 billion of annual recurring revenue right now. Right?
Okay. And let's talk about your customers then, Daniel. Red Hat serves some of the world's biggest companies. You've got UPS, Cathay Pacific, Airbus, BMW Group. How would you describe the profile of customers you serve, say, by industries? What are some of the use cases they've built? And which is the most important customer group ultimately?
Every customer is important, right? I think if you look into the industries, we break our industries kind of into 4 vertical industries. The financial services, telecommunications, public sector, and of course the rest. Financial services is, I would say, the largest vertical that we have. More than, probably about, in Asia Pacific, more than 40% of the business come from financial services industry. And in telecommunication, we actually also are very important. It's about 15 to 16% of the business. And then public sector is also pretty massive, about close to 20%. And then the rest come from manufacturing, what you call manufacturing services and retail. Right? In financial services, if you are using any of the bank's mobile application, right, in Singapore, all the bank's mobile application, if you go into Indonesia, around Southeast Asia, or even globally, those applications will be running on Red Hat platforms. In the same way, telcos, as you move from what you call 4G to 5G, the core networks being, delivering all these 5G services run on Red Hat's operating system as well as container management system. And in, airline industry, as we mentioned before, Cathay Pacific or even Singapore Airlines, as you use some of the application, it is powered by Red Hat technologies in the back.
But generally speaking, in terms of use cases, right, what they demand for you is generally a product that's interoperable across industries because they are the ones that build their own consumer-facing applications on top of it. Okay. And geographies-wise, Daniel, appreciate it if you could take us through your footprint in APAC, which is the most important market within APAC and the role of your Singapore operations in this regard.
Right. So I think every market is important as well.
Is APAC a major market for Red Hat?
Yeah. So, Red Hat looks at Asia-Pacific, in terms of 5 regions. We have Japan as one region, India and South Asia, surrounding India as a region, Australia, New Zealand, and of course Greater China, and then we have what we call Southeast Asia and Korea.
Yes.
Right. And within this, we have mature markets as well as emerging markets. Southeast Asia to us is a very high growth emerging markets because of the huge amount of population, number one. Secondly, the number of banks, telecommunication companies, and a lot of companies, and providing services to customers. And with that, they are actually building a lot of software and interfaces to allow customers to interact with their offerings. And that's where we play as the operating platform for all this application that's being built by the customers to serve all the needs in all these countries. And Southeast Asia, I would say, is one of the highest growth regions that we have. And Singapore, of course, is very important because it acts as our Asia-Pacific headquarters. And we really operate and drive all the strategies of Asia-Pacific out of Singapore.
And let's take a look at where things are at for Red Hat right now. Earlier you mentioned this as well, and per a report by the Motley Fool, Red Hat's OpenShift saw $1.7 billion USD in annual recurring revenue. What numbers are we looking at for Red Hat Asia-Pacific's business? Which are the product lines, the verticals seeing the greatest growth? Is it still OpenShift? Is it more on the AI side, as you mentioned earlier?
I think in terms of absolute growth percentage, of course, AI, but it comes from a very small base. Right, but OpenShift is the one that is actually having the highest growth in a strong double-digit growth in Asia Pacific. Actually, very aligned to globally. But on the other hand, what's interesting in Asia Pacific, we find that actually the adoption of AI is actually much faster in Asia Pacific compared, to the other geographies that Red Hat operates in globally.
And what are the key drivers of growth in APAC? Is there a targeted CAGR you're looking at? Which geography is one to watch and a bright spot for Red Hat?
I would say, like I mentioned earlier, the emerging markets are growing really fast. India, for one. Right, and secondly is Southeast Asia. And when you look at Southeast Asia, that's including Singapore as well. And what's really driving this growth is a couple of folds, right? Number one, of customers driving the digital transformation as they modernize their applications. And as they modernize their application, Red Hat works with them in tandem of their life cycle to help them modernize it and run it more efficiently in an open multi-hybrid cloud manner. They can decide where, if they decide to use cloud, not their own infrastructure in the cloud, we can operate there. Or if they want to build their own data center. And today we sense a lot of countries are moving in what we call sovereign clouds as well. They want sovereignty because they want to be able to control their data.
Yeah.
And then the data needs to stay within the country itself. So we support that as well. We support interoperability if people do not, need that kind of sovereignty.
If you're just tuning in, we're in conversation with Daniel, our VP of Enterprise Sales Asia Pacific at Red Hat. And Daniel, let's set our sights on the future right now. We must look at generative AI. Red Hat had in 2025 announced a hybrid cloud solution for agentic AI in collaboration with Nvidia. And that same month also, May 2025, Red Hat and AMD also deepened their relationship to support AI and virtualization solutions. Right. What should we know about these partnerships? How are they key in helping Red Hat evolve its suite of offerings in the age of Gen AI?
Yeah, so as mentioned earlier, we actually kind of the middle platform, right, that supports any application that's built on top, interacting with the hardware, any kind of innovation on the hardware layer. As we move into the era of AI or generative AI, NVIDIA, and the ecosystem around AI is also evolving and changing, and NVIDIA has emerged as a very, very key important player in this area. So what we have announced with NVIDIA is a validated design and architectures that companies can actually deploy very quickly. That's already tested in the labs, and also definitely will work really fast together with the NVIDIA architecture and NVIDIA chipsets itself, right? In the same way, AMD, we're also working with them in two ways, right? Of course, in the new GPUs that they are actually working on, as well as in the old CPUs or EPY MC CPUs that they have to support infrastructure that can run virtualized application as well as containerized application in the same platform. So if you look at open source and look at platform companies like Red Hat, the ecosystem engagement is really important because we actually make sure that every hardware vendors or ecosystem that wants to support, the platforms that we operate in needs to be operating it seamlessly for the customers. So that, like I said earlier, we actually democratize, the application from the hardware to allow any application to work with any hardware.
And how are such partnerships critical in ensuring that you have a diverse range of hardware providers that you can tap on amid an uncertain global trade environment? That's one. And if I could put this in given time constraints, how will generative AI augment your growth trajectory?
Right. So firstly, how the ecosystem works, I think goes back to the roots of open source. And because our source code or codes are open, our partners or ecosystem partner can actually understand how our platform works. And they actually contributes to the same open source project upstream so that, the interoperability is already resolved at that stage. Of course, in what we call downstream, we actually do a lot of validated testing to make sure that actually it works. And as we look into AI, and in Red Hat, we believe that AI, similar to the technologies that came before, whether it's the cloud, whether it's in the web, is powered by open source. That AI will be open source as well. And we are working, on what we call the operating system for AI, which is in an open source project, a bit of jargon called VLLM, right? That actually powers and allows enterprises to run any AI large language model, on any accelerator that's from NVIDIA, from Intel, from AMD, or from any other future, GPUs or NPUs or what I call accelerator manufacturers that will come. And that will allow us to fuel the growth and how do we include AI into every application into the future. And we see that to be the pivotal growth as AI is being adopted in a more, production level as we move into the next couple of years.
We talked a lot about open source and the benefits of open source. Now, according to Red Hat CEO Matt Hicks in an interview with Forbes in May 2025, 5 billion contributions were made to open source code repositories around the world last year. But as the world becomes more protectionist in nature, what opportunities or risks does this present?
Well, I think open source has no boundaries and it's not owned by any country, right? And why? Because it's contributions coming from all over the world. including China, including India, including the Western continents as well. So I think open source will continue to be that innovative driving force that works to me above all this protectionist, kind of word that's coming. But at the same time, earlier on I talked about sovereignty. A lot of countries or regions are looking at how do we, while leveraging the innovative open manner of how software in open source is being built, but also put a layer of sovereignty where data and IP rights or information are actually protected within a country itself. So it's really important because in the same way as every country wants to, protect what they have, you will actually stop innovation if you just do if you operate in that way. So it's a balance between, and open source provide that balance, the ability to innovate as a global community, but at the same time allowing, countries and companies to actually build kind of control environment within the sovereignty that they want.
Now, during that same interview, Red Hat CEO Hicks, he brought up a concept called the hybrid of today and tomorrow in the software industry. Basically, it means enterprises or Red Hat's customers balance the need to optimize day-to-day operations with technology available now versus experimenting and keeping an eye on future technologies. What does this approach mean for Red Hat then in enabling your clients going forward? What are the tech frontiers you're keeping an eye on in APAC?
Right. So I would say two things. If you look at where we are going as a company, we are constantly helping our customers managing what they have today, the challenges of what they have today. And today in the business IT world, we use terms like virtualization, right? Because a lot of hardware is being virtualized. And that's kind of the old way. As you look into the future, it's about containerization and it's about AI. And if you look further into the future, it's about quantum. And quantum will probably change the way, how everybody build application because security will be a major issue around it. So when you talk about the word hybrid, actually it goes back to the basic fundamental on the word that, Red Hat really loves is called open. And when you say open or hybrid, it means choice. Customers and enterprises or even countries has the ability to choose how they want to deploy their application and their software. So what is pivotal here is Red Hat is working with customers to really manage and optimize what they have today while preparing them for the future world of AI as well as quantum.
And finally, a quick one before we let you go, Daniel. What are some future plans for Red Hat for the rest of this year into the next? What can we expect in APAC and in Singapore?
I think, like I mentioned earlier, in terms of Southeast Asia, definitely it's a growth market. We'll definitely look into more investment, right, in the markets that are growing, as well as in areas like AI that is kind of exploding. IDC said that, in 2023 and 2024 is the phase where companies are actually experimenting on AI and especially Gen AI. From 2025 into 26 and 27 is about moving these AI experiments into production. So really what we are doing is working with customers on how, as you move into production, your challenges are different. And one of the key things that we're working on is what we call inferencing on AI. Inferencing is how you actually ask the ChatGPT, right, a question, and then ChatGPT has to process your questions. As you get more and more questions being asked and more AIs are built into application, how do you actually respond this in scale? So we are combining our strength in terms of operating system in Kubernetes as well as in AI inferencing to create, a more cost-efficient, high-speed, and more effective way of driving AI into the future.
Thanks so much for the insights, Daniel. That was Daniel, our VP of Enterprise Sales Asia Pacific at Red Hat. Thank you so much for joining us on Money FM 89.3.
Before acting on the information on Money FM, please consider if it's suitable for your own investment objectives, financial situation, and risk tolerance. To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.